Bam.
Hi, everybody. This is Rico Aviles, and you're watching the Break It Down Show.
Man, we get it done around here. I'll tell you what. Rico's cool, man. I love having you on the show. You're going to understand why here in a few minutes, but you do something that the military is not good at doing. And you understand a lot of the challenges, and I bet we're going to spend a lot of time there. It's one of the things that I want to write. I legitimately want to write a peer-reviewed paper, and I've written a couple of these over the time, but a peer-reviewed paper on this process because what you've done, what you've managed to do in your service, is truly incredible, and in spite of the organization's inability to train you to do it well, to train people to use you well, to work as a team with the person. So, you've done a lot of interpretation and in a lot of different settings, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know how much specific.
Yes.
Now, were you an actual interpreter in the Army when you were in, or was this like an additional duty because you parle Spanish?
So when I was in the Army, I took the D lab, and then I took the D, not the D lab. I'm sorry. Excuse me. The DLPT.
And when you said D-Lab, I was with you. You're right. The DLPT
DLPT.
language class. I got to go into this real quick.
Yeah.
The DLPT is the language test that the military uses to see what kind of proficiency you have, and it's a wild test because they take words that you understand and they reorder them into basically something you can't understand, right? And so, like, hey, in this language we're going to teach you right now, you conjugate a verb. The verb goes after the noun, and so you're like, okay, great. So they'll give you a noun. Basketball, dribble, and so you're like, okay, basketball, dribble, got it. And
yeah, the passing rate is I think less than 20%, if I recall.
And the thing is if you and so they're like, okay, now the adjective always goes after the verb, and you're like, oh god damn, basketball, dribble, yellow, and you're like, oh boy. And so then they go to the next level, and they teach you this language, and then they test you on it like immediately. And so if you get lost at any point in this one section of the test, you're done. But if you can hang on, you can go and they'll send you to lovely Monterey, and you'll go learn, Arabic, Chinese, maybe Spanish. Spanish kind of easy, but that's what the DLPT is. It looks for proficiency in the ability to do languages, and it's really easy to have that capacity, but not be able to pass the test because the test is pretty complex. So. I don't know that anybody's explained that on a podcast ever.
No.
Or with the actual experience of taking the test, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. Or like it's the accented syllable, and you're like, it's 5-syllable words. You're like, 3, I think, and there's no time to think, right? It's crazy.
I'll tell you this, and I actually have my paperwork over here somewhere. I missed 2 questions out of the I don't know how many hundreds of questions. I missed 2 questions. And I was really mad, and I know what questions I missed. And it took me 37 minutes to complete it.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing: is I had already been trained as an interpreter when I was in high school, because I lived in Puerto Rico and whatnot. So when I was in Puerto Rico, I was part of FBLA, and it's a funny story. I've never told this story. I think I went to what's called a business high school, right? Where you learn you have to be suited up, there's a dress code, you have to keep certain academic grades, you have to have things that you do, because in Puerto Rico we do 10, 11, 12th grade, right? And when I went in there, what I used to do, because in Puerto Rico every class is in Spanish and English is like a second language, and what ended up happening when I went to high school was I had a teacher that when I took the English test, she looked at me, she walked up to me, she starts talking to me in English, and I start talking in English. Then she switches to Spanish, and I switch to Spanish. And in front of my dad, she goes, how long have you been failing the test on purpose so you would take English 101?
Yeah.
And I froze, and I remember my dad used to say, if you get caught doing something, just tell the truth as slowly as possible. And I said, since 7th grade. And she goes, okay, well, you're going to be in my class, and I'm going to teach you how to be an interpreter. Her name was Mrs. Romero Ramirez, something like that. It's been over 15 years, 17 years since this. And, dude, she did. And the way that she trained me was every day I would sit there for 2 hours, and I would read something, and then I translate it.
Right.
And then I just kind of became obsessed because I was okay at it. And my buddies started paying me to translate their homework. or translate like a magazine, because magazines weren't translated in Spanish. So we would get like Nintendo Power, Game Pro, Game Pro. I think that was the name of it, Game Pro. And I'd sit with my buddies and I do what's called a sight translation, where I just look at it and I read,
Yeah.
And then when I joined the Army, I didn't think that was a job. I went in as an MP, but I've always had an affiliation for languages, because I could speak English since I was like 5 or 6, my dad says. Obviously, I don't remember,
Yeah.
And when I went into the Army as an MP, we had situations where, people would get stupid and they'd play the language game, It's like, oh, no te entiendo, no understand. So my command was pretty smart. I had a good command in 463rd MP Company, and they said, go take the fucking D-Lab, because if we run into a situation where, immigration comes or something happens, we want to have someone that's certified.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. So I went and took it, and I came back, and it's funny you say that. I came back like an hour later. I was like, all right, I passed it out of 2 point. I have my paper somewhere. And they were like, what? I go, yeah, I passed it. Oh, I apologize for that. I was like, yeah, I passed it. And they were like, what the fuck? And like, yeah, I didn't know at the time that was like a big deal, that it was like really hard, because I just took it and I was like, oh, this is fucking shit, like whatever. But yeah, I've done a lot of interpretations.
But when you come in, walk it and take it and walk out with only like this is for the audience, this, that's excellent. So you can go, and once you had the experience, you can absolutely improve, because you can get, it's not a test you normally can prepare for. There's not a big book for it. Maybe there is now, but it's something where you just go do it. But once you've done it once, you're like, aha, now I'm a little more ready, and you're doing less scrambling, right? So you can kind of game the test. You didn't need to do that, though. You just came in and fought that thing.
Well, I trained like, it's funny. I was talking to my wife about this. Like, my life, if I could like describe my life in one sentence, it would be training. Just training. Like, I was telling my wife this yesterday. She was asking me about Iraq, and I served in 08, 09, straight out of basic. And dude, I remember like we would sit and do room clearing. Like when we started going to the Mahalas. Are you familiar with Baghdad? Oh, you're muted there. Couldn't hear you.
Oh. Yes, I'm very familiar.
Okay, so I was in Amaria and in Cadre.
Okay.
I don't know if you know those places.
Sure.
Amaria, there was a place like near Thunder in Michigan. You turn right, and there was a street called Screaming Lady. And
I just got to jump here and say this. He's describing what we name streets, so we'll name them Detroit, Ford, Torino, Screaming Lady, Basket, whatever it's going to be, so that we don't have to worry about saying, the name in one, in the native tongue, and two, we don't want anybody to be able to associate the name of the street with the actual name of the street. So that's why he's saying these.
Yeah, because you would go out, once you go outside the wire, you call your SP time, come back, you call your RP time, your starting point, your returning point. You call your packs, which is your people and your numbers, and you fucking lock and load. And I remember hanging out with the interpreter we had, and I just like started picking up on I don't know what their dialect is, but the dialect that they used in Iraq. And when we started doing detaining operations, I'd be like, "Shishkula Jundayla Habibi." I was like, "Whoa, what the fuck?" But languages have always been natural to me. And I told my wife, I said, "Dude, I think we did over 320 combat patrols in 10 months." Nice. Because the last 5 months, the SOFA kicked in.
Right.
And dude, I remember it was just like, I didn't like our Staff Sergeant O'Neill. I didn't like him because he was just like, "No, you cleared their fucking corner wrong," when he just hit you in the head. But I tell you what, dude, when we'd go in and do what we had to do, like, we never got hit.
Yeah.
We never got hit. We found every fucking IED. We caught a guy that put a bomb inside of our CID station while we were room clearing, like training. Like we were, looking back now, obviously, because I was 19 when I went, I turned 20, 21.
Yeah.
And so it's like, what the fuck? And looking back, man, like you kind of think like, fuck, like that could have been it, And it was like, yeah, a lot of guys that was. And like, you don't really realize, like, I remember the first 2 weeks I was going on missions, I'd come back, clean my gun, and I'd just puke. Just fucking go behind my hooch and I'd puke. Because my body wasn't used to like being up here. And I remember like the first time we cleared a house, we went to pick up a very bad person. I can't remember his name. And we woke him up. And,
yeah. He had a mustache.
He had a mustache. He was not a very good person. We had UAV on the target. We had been surveilling the house for a while. You know how it is.
Yeah.
And I remember I came back and I was like, oh man, that one's smooth. And fucking sure as hell, my staff sergeant goes, nope, we got to go drill this because it took us 5 minutes. And I don't remember how much time, but I'm just exaggerating. Yeah. 5 minutes and it should have taken us less and blah, blah, blah. And dude, I hated that. But then when I got out of the Army, I applied that to my life.
Yeah.
And for a while, I was stuck in that phase of like planning too much and then I wouldn't execute. And now I have like a, kind of like when I interpret, I have a path that I go and I have a system. And that's made me help me be pretty happy and successful, to be honest to you. Like,
let me jump in here and let's back up a little bit because when you go out and you go and you fight somewhere and you develop, a capacity to work with languages, again, like you took the DLPT, did you ever go to DLI and learn a language, or do they just say you have a capacity for it? Because that's what the test is for, right? Is to say, hey, Rico has the ability to learn languages. The next thing should be, we should send him to DLI to go, learn Arabic or whatever it is. Did they ever send you to DLI?
No, man, because
it's the best part. Yeah.
The thing is like, I let a lot of people guide my decisions when I was in the Army. Mm-hmm. Like one of the things that this is probably the only regret I've ever had in my life is I never dropped an 18 X-ray packet because I let everybody else around me tell me, oh no, don't do that. That's not for you, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, nobody knew that I knew Spanish. Nobody knew that I was an interpreter for a while. Nobody knew that I would work out and go on rucks. Nobody knew that I was like studying. And, that's on me, obviously, because I allowed that to happen. But like, no one really did that. Like they just said, can you pass this test? And I said, yeah. And they're like, do you have former interpreter training? I go, yeah, I do. And I was like, I competed in improvised oratory and I won states like all the time.
Right.
And they were like, what? And like, I never really, man, it's crazy. I never really realized like how much of a nerd I was until I left the island. And then I never really realized how different I am until I got married. Mm-hmm. Like, because like they never said, I just went, took it, and the command was surprised.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, here you go. And they're like, all right, we're going to put it. So you get the Quebec, I think it's Quebec Lima, the identifier for it. Or is Quebec Lima SRT?
I think it depends on the era too. Like they changed that stuff. Anyhow, so they identified your ability to become an interpreter. But this is not going to shock you, but it's going to shock a lot of people. There's no specific school they send you through to be an interpreter. Not a basic school. Okay, maybe there's a basic school somewhere for someone from another country, but you're not really from another country. So like if you had like an Iraqi guy who came back and he became a Lima, they might run him through basic and then some kind of a central course. But they don't ever teach you the professional capacity to be an interpreter. And here's the other thing. They don't teach that staff sergeant the professional capacity to use an interpreter. They just send you out there like that shit's easy to do, right? You never, ever, ever, as an interpreter, get briefed up. Hey, Rico. By the way, Rico's on our side, so we can trust this guy. All the training that you might ever encounter for interpreters is focused on a lack of trust. You always have to check this person. They only say what you say, and it's all, let me tell you something. As a spy, it's all wrong. None of it is what you're supposed to do. Rico should already know. Matter of fact, Rico has ability to talk to people, and he's in the Army. Leave him alone. Teach him how to ask questions and influence conversations, but they don't do that. They
kind of did. They kind of did because like I was
not professional.
Yeah, no, not. I didn't go to like interrogation school and stuff like that. But I will say this, and it's probably in my blood. I don't know. It's just me guessing. But my dad he's a retired cop for 30 years, and my dad was deep undercover for like 17 years. Like if you go on Google right now and you type in Special Agent Richard Aviles, you'll see something that says Romero case or something like that, and it's like 68 pages, and it's my dad. It's my dad, a case that he did where he coincidentally the same day that I left the island to go to basic training, he was picking up, here is Espinal Almeida. He was picking up, and I want to get this right, 489 keys of coke. So my dad was, and I never knew my dad, didn't know that stuff until like 3 years ago, by the way. Never knew it. Never fucking knew it. And like when I was in the army, one thing I noticed is like I never really fit in with anybody because I was like really aware of like, I knew everything about everybody. I knew this staff sergeant was fucking this private's wife. I knew these two were lesbians before, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell were doing, and I was like, I didn't care. But what people didn't like is that I knew that shit and they didn't know how to like deal with me. So people would label you as like, oh, he's difficult, or oh, he's not trustworthy. I was like, yeah, because I'm wary of your bullshit. But no one ever fucked with me.
Right.
And like no one realized that. So when I went as an MP, one of the things they teach you is like, we had a guy that was an NYPD cop for 15 years. He fucking left to join the army as an MP. And bro, that dude could sell fucking sand to an Arab. Dude, he could. I saw him one time because like when I first started getting cases, I would just throw the book on people. Like, fuck you, I know this, I know that. And people would be like, look at my fifth right. And I'm like, well, and it was like, bro, like you can't, this is in Iraq. You can't talk to people like that. So dude, I made it my mission to sit down with him in a warrant officer that we had, that I don't want to name him because he's still active. And they just like taught me how to talk to people. And like we'd run these scenarios like at the PMO, like when I was off, I'd go drink with them and talk. And then I started like learning how to finesse things, how to like manipulate a conversation and how to like move, things. And then when I started doing legal and like human trafficking cases and drug cases and gang cases, I started like analyzing things and looking at things like a little bit more different. And that's why like I tell people when they like come to the podcast, like I'm gonna find out what I want to find out. And a lot of people like they get a little too comfortable and they don't realize like where we're going with things. But I wish deep down, man, I wish I would have stayed with a 3-letter agency because I miss it. I miss working. I miss all that stuff, man. But the thing is they just don't. They never paid. Number one, they never paid good because I did it by myself here. Right. A lot of the trafficking cases are from here in Missouri. And like, dude, like I gave out, and my marketing is going to kill me when he hears this. I gave out like hundreds of hours for free.
Yeah.
Because, you get cases like, man, I deal with a lot of kids and like fucking people don't have money. Right. So I'm like, I can't, man, the moment you throw a kid into the equation, I'm emotionally compromised in the sense of I'm going to help, Yeah. Now I respect myself a little more, and I don't do none of that stuff anymore. Right. Number one, because some stuff that happened here, we can talk about that later. And number two, mental health wise, the way that I deal with things internally is very weird. Yeah. Like to me, everything is shit. Like the whole world is shit. So when I wake up, it's like, all right, how am I gonna get fucked in the ass today?
You're not wrong.
Yeah, and but the thing is that's why I'm always smiling, is because I understand that. Oh, hey, I didn't see, some other stuff, and like, it's funny because I never talk about these things with people because people just make fun of me. They're like, oh, whatever. I grew up in LA, and I'm like, oh, okay, man, cool. And I just step back and shut the fuck up,
Well, look, I mean, and I want to get into a variety of things. There's obviously a lot of stuff that we can talk about, but I do want to stay in this interpreter thing, and in a lot of ways, you're making the point for me when you, and a lot of what the military does is you do have these sergeants and these warrants that do train you, but what you're talking about is more OJT focused, right? This is it's not traditional doctrinal things. So we sent hundreds of thousands of people into a combat zone with little to no language capacity. When you do find some with language capacity, you weren't specifically trained on how to work it. Yep, there are great warrant officers. There are New York cops that say, F it, I'm going to go to the Army. And these guys can't. But if you didn't reach out to those dudes, they wouldn't have trained you.
No, they wouldn't.
They had other stuff to do. And this is my greater point about the interpreter part of this is you have this linguist cultural capacity, you know, and we don't treat it. Look, you can tell me right now, like if I'm not shooting my 9mm straight, or if I'm not shooting my M4 straight, you can tell me right now, like, let's do these drills. Let's do this. Like, make sure we zero this thing. If you can't zero in 18 shots, we got a problem. Like we're going to go back to the basics, all those things. We do not have that doctrinally for how to influence conversations. Your ability to control a conversation with what you do is not a repeatable skill that the Army trains you specifically to obtain. You get that through your own experience. You might occasionally find a person who goes to a specific course, even outside of the military. But when it comes to interpreter and interpreter operations and working as an interpretation team, they don't treat that stuff like they do. Look, you spent more time learning how to throw a hand grenade than anybody had a book you to learn how to be an interpreter.
Yeah, man, and like it's funny you say that because
how many hand grenades have you thrown in your career?
Probably all in training.
Yeah, right. Zero.
All in training.
Zero
yeah,
outside, wire, right?
Outside of the
How
wire,
many
like
conversations have you had? You've had
how many what?
Conversations in a combat zone with people, right?
Fuck.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
So here's the next question. Yeah. Did you fire more rounds in combat, or did you have more conversations with Iraqis or Afghans or whatever?
I had way more conversation. I didn't have to fire a single round, man. I was pretty blessed. Like we went in 08 and we were in Path Liberty. I was in Camp Liberty. I was in Path 13.
Sure.
And dude, I tell you, we were really blessed, man. Like people don't. I always got mad because I was like, I wanted a cap. You know how it is when you're fucking 19 and 20, 21 and your dick gets hard by just looking at it and you're like, yeah, let's go fucking cut somebody. And
I want a combat action badge.
And then the first time I remember, like we cleared into a room and we fucking come in and I fucking see the guy and he's asleep and we fucking walk up, zip tie him, bag him, and we go. And I was like, oh fuck, like what the fuck? Did we really just do that?
Yeah.
And like you start thinking that you can do that forever, but I never really thought about the language thing. And the funny thing is I do like consultation with interpreters and I teach interpreters like about, you know, some of the stuff that I do. But mostly like in my classes, what I realize is like people don't really know how to teach other interpreters to be better interpreters, right? Right. And like one of the things, and I'll drop this knowledge for whoever's listening, you normally have to pay for a class, but this will be cool because I like you. People think that you can speak a language and be an interpreter. And that's not true. That's not true 100%. Because after you learn a language, what you have to start understanding is the culture. Once you understand the culture, that changes. That changes. Like this morning, with my notebook, it's fucking over there. This morning, I was just reading an article from Venezuela, and I was just looking at it, and I found like 5 words, and I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Yeah. I immediately wrote it down, sent some messages, got it, added it to my thing. And the thing is like, you know, people don't take that seriously until they try to like check you. Like I had a client that he went to Costa Rica and he got a tattoo in Costa Rica while I interpreted over the phone the fucking tattoo. Like, you know the amount of trust that you have to have on a motherfucker for let someone that doesn't speak the language that you speak tattoo you and ink you while the other homie is like, people don't get that because everybody's like, I just use Google Translate.
So, and you're making like, again, like you're helping make this big. A lot of our combat is conversations. It just is. We're vying, we're competing with the enemy for the attention of the populace, right? And so we don't spend any significant professional time. If you're in a tank unit, you're going to go to NTC, you're going to train your ass off, you're going to ride around in tanks all day. You might spend an afternoon where some of you engage local populist role players, but most everybody's going to be pulling security, right? Every single person there, though, can possibly talk to someone, and we never focus on that. So,
or listen.
Why we look at why we lose things, We don't know how to interpret well, at least not professionally, not institutionally. We don't know how to work an interpreter, and we don't teach the interpreter and the meter how to work together in a professional fashion. And because we can't deal with the cultural part, right? Because Iraq is different in the north, the south. Think of Iraq like Texas. This is for the audience. Think of Iraq like Texas. If you're in Amarillo, totally different than Brownsville, which is totally different than Houston, which is totally different than El Paso.
Yep.
And culturally, it matters. You know, they all can tell you they're Texans and be proud of it, but El Paso, Texas is not the same as Dallas, Texas. It's definitely the same as Odessa, Texas.
And I'll add this to another thing is, you know, I'm from Puerto Rico, and a lot of times people go, well, you don't understand, you know, Mexican lingo. And I go, motherfucker, the fuck I do. You know how many wiretaps of MS-13 and stuff like that I've had to translate? Like, you really want to try this? And I remember I told someone one day, I sent one of my interpreters to a thing, and it was a Mexican lady, and she was from Aguascalientes, and they spoke like very, like, well, her education level was like 7th grade.
Right.
And I remember she said, my interpreter said, bizcocho, which in Puerto Rico, that means cake. In Mexico, that means vagina. And see, these are things that we don't like waste time, I guess people say it, doing it. And like, no one really takes it seriously either is the thing. Like, people don't really respect it. Like, when I tell people I'm a professional interpreter, they're like, oh, that's cute. And I'm just like, mamabicho, you know, like cocksucker, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because it's like, and that's one of the things, like, I've even talked to like SF guys. Like, I have a friend of mine who just retired. He was an Intel SF guy, and he was telling me that he's like, hey, how do you teach people a language? And I go, like, from zero? He goes, yeah. And I said, well, you start phonetically, like A-E-I-O-U, right? A-E-I-O-U, right?
Yeah.
Because you hear people talking Spanish that they learned in school, and what they don't understand is all the schools are wrong. And I'll say this publicly in front of anybody. What they teach you in school is how to be a translator and how to be an interpreter, right? You know, glass, vaso, right? But what is this made out of? Right? Like that's the thing, is like, you're not understanding the dynamics of it. And then on top of that, you have, if you want to take it one step further, you have what's called transcreations. When you create words, right? You see that in video games a lot. And the thing is that people don't understand is that then you have etiquettes, right? Like, I did a consultation a couple weeks ago, and an interpreter said, I don't know where my left and right limits are. And I said, you're there to interpret and translate. That's it. You're not there to make a fucking opinion. You're not there to make fucking friends. You don't take gifts. You don't do shit. Like, when I go, dude, like, nobody fucks with me. Nobody talks with me. And if they talk to me, I just kind of look at them and I fucking walk away. Yeah. Because I just don't want to deal with it. Because I don't want to give the magistrate or anybody the idea that, oh, these two are homies and maybe he could be lying, you know? Because it's like, it's really risky. And what kills me is, like, even like the SF guy that I was talking to, he goes, yeah, man, like, he's like, that's not how they taught us, like, when we were learning languages. Because I guess SF has to go through like a 6-month course or something like that. I'm not 100%. I don't know how Special Forces fucking works. But he was telling me he had to go through like a 6-month language course, and he goes, yeah, man, it was like this word for that word, this word for that word. And I was like, nah, man, like, look, like, this is how you say it, and you don't sound like a white dude. You know, like, when you hear people saying melamo, and it's like, but that's the thing, is like, people just don't care, and it could really save your life. Like, you know how many times I've been in situations where people like get stupid and they start talking Spanish. I go, yo, papi, what's up? And they're, oh, and it's like, yeah, come on, ven acá, what's up? You know, and that's the thing. It's the same with Portuguese. I do it too, you know.
So let me push back a little bit, because I mean, I'm an expert at using an interpreter, right? And if you and I were to go roll together, wherever we were going to go, you would understand what I wanted from you every time we went out. And if you needed a pre-mission brief, great, but you would understand like the basic idea. So like, one of the things I'd go out and I would ask, like what's the simplest problem we could solve here today? You know, like, what's going on? How are you doing? And then they would say, you know, they start into this thing that they would always say, and I would go, I would la 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 la, no makuma, no maku karaba. I can't fix that. I can't fix bad water. I can't fix bad electricity. And my interpreter, as I was like going la 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 la, you know, he's like, he's going to tell you right now in Arabic that he can't fix water and electricity. He wants you to get small. What can we fix? What are we missing? you know, and the guy would be like, holy shit, that guy just said Makumai Maku Karaba. And so, and I'm just saying it, you know, white guy English style, but I would say it properly when I was with those guys to give them the idea. And so my interpreter knew the dance with me. And there were times when I'd be like, I'm going to ask the most basic question you know I know the answer to, but I want you to ask it because that question is unlocking something for me that I need to unlock. And you're going to forget, and you're going to look at me and be like, Pete, you know the answer to this question, but I'm doing something with it. And so I would teach my interpreter, like, I want you to ask this question to get them to do this thing. And then I would be like, I would no longer have to ask that question anymore. They would, well, first they would forget, and they'd be like, Pete, you know about Ramadan? And I'm like, ask the question, get them talking about, you know, and
you're
like,
building rapport, and you're also trying to see if they're lying to you. I do that with people all the time.
Yeah,
like,
I don't ever worry about lying.
lying.
That's just my thing. I don't ever worry about lying because I have to build trust. My job to build trust with them. It's not the other way around. So when I do that, I go, hey, Rico, I want you, if you got something and you're with it and you're on it. And the other thing I say is the best way to not find the bombs is to say, where are the bombs?
The bombs.
We never ask the question straight in. And I'm like, you guys must, and I love to do this. This is me when I do build rapport. And I'm like, you must have in Spanish, there must be a way, a phrase of saying, we're not going to go directly at something to get it. We're going to go in through the side door or the back door, and they're going to give it to us. You know, and then everybody's like, yes, of course. It doesn't matter, Arabic, Afghan, doesn't matter. Everybody has a phrase for that. Some kind of way to say, yeah, this is how. No one just comes direct in when they want something. They always put something else out. And so I would teach my interpreter, like, this is how I want you to approach these problems. And if you get on something, if you got a guy talking, just wave me off. I'm going to shut up. And then just when you're ready, brief me on what you're talking about so I can help keep up and keep the notes. And in fact, when we're good, I'm a note taker and they're getting all the information.
Yeah, see, and that's different because normally, like, and again, I don't know about that environment. I wish I knew now. Normally with the interpreters, I'm going to say whatever you say. But I get what you're saying is you're teaching the interpreter how to, like, analyze a conversation and be able to see like where it's going. Like, I do that mentally, like when I'm interpreting. Sure. That's how I'm so efficient. Like I can translate at 150, 192 words per minute. I've clocked myself because what I do, a little exercise I do is, if you want to see if you're a really good interpreter, put on a song.
Yeah.
Put on a song and do a simultaneous interpretation at the same time. Now, if you can do that, you're really fucking good.
Man, you know what? I'm less worried about speed, though. I really am. I mean, I'm working, like, I'm talking to, like, the highest level. We're trying to, Rico, we're going to go out today, and our number one job is to find people we can build trust with. That's the first thing. We're not going to, I'm not going to go do anything. You want to feed us cake? You know what we're going to do? And here's the thing. I spent a lot of time outside the wire. And the thing I figured out was, and it took me a long time to figure this out. So it's not like my brilliance was like a rock moving across the ocean. Like, it just was not very beautiful. You never thought it was going to happen. But I realized, oh my God, we always go eat their food. What if I brought them to the chow hall? What if when I brought that Afghan onto the on the post of the base of the fob that we're at, what if I treated him like the important person that he was, and we didn't search that person, and we just brought them on out of respect?
Yeah.
And then I gave that dude ice cream and muffins, and I said, load your pockets up with whatever you want, take it back to your kids. Now you think about that and how much trust and confidence I got from these guys.
We used to do that with guys, by the way. When we had a murder case or something, or a drug case, I'd come in with those fritter pies that they sell in the machines. We used to have a box of them, and I bring him one, and I give him one. Bro, I can't tell you how many people, like the kids, we did, and I'm sure you know what this is. When I was in Iraq, we started doing what was called Hearts and Minds.
Sure.
And I had the bat and hide system. I was in charge of that. Yeah. And I remember one time we had an intel guy with us, and he spoke Arabic, and he had a backpack, he had a gun, and the backpack was always like heavy. And I was like, what the fuck is in there? And I remember one time I went in, and I was like his eyes in case something went down. And he started talking to the guy, and he pulls out money, and when he pulls out the money, he pulls out a notebook. And I was like, what the fuck is happening? When we got back to the base, I talked to him. He goes, bro, Hearts and Minds is just us collecting their DNA and their retinas. Yeah. And I never in my life.
About that?
The what?
I'll tell you a secret about that. That's so wrong. It is so wrong. Think about this.
Mhm.
I go to Puerto Rico. You and I go to Puerto Rico. You're my interpreter, and we have a bats and hides machine. We go around and start enrolling males into a database. How's that going to go for us?
We're gonna how good are your fighting skills? How fast can you run?
Yeah. How fast can you run? Right? Like, because we can go to here in Beethorn Stadium and hand out cocktails. How are we going to do?
Yeah, man. But that's the thing is, like, people don't realize, and like nowadays people do the face identification, and like, you know, everything's digital now and shit, and it's just like, man, I feel safer when I just write something on a good old piece of paper. Like, I write my jokes on I have, like, I'm looking at my 5 notebooks. It looks so messy. I write my jokes on paper. Like, I write my passwords on paper, and I separate. Like, if I have a two-face identification, I hide one and I know where it's at.
Yeah.
And it's just ridiculous to me. And it's interesting talking to you, because a lot of times when I have these conversations with people, they look at you like you're like an alien or something. And I'm just like, oh, okay, we don't have to talk about that. But then, like, the what?
I want to put us back in Puerto Rico. I want to spend a minute in this thought exercise.
Yeah, dude, you got me all day, bro.
If we go to Aguadilla, right? And
hold on, let me stop you right there.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, do it.
Aguadilla.
Okay,
there you go.
Okay, and the thing is sometimes
it's all love.
And sometimes me playing the white guy for you, like, you let you go, no, you know, that is also rapport building. But let me back up. We go to Aguadilla, and it's terrible, I'm sure.
No, it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
And we are enrolling adult military age males, Puerto Rican dudes, into the Bats and Hides database. And then we go back. Or matter of fact, let me change it. The MP unit that we're not attached to, but we're just hanging out with, right? Mm-hmm. They go out and they enroll people into Bats and Hides, which is just a database for IDing people. This is for the audience; they know that stuff. Yeah. We go back the next day and we start asking around Aguadilla what happened yesterday, and they're like, "Oh yeah, a bunch of Army guys came out here and they did things." They are not going to know, because we never said this is a national database. This is going to help us protect you guys. This is going to help us put people in jail. We never say that. We just come in, take a picture of their eyeball, enter all the information in, and then the dude's like, what the fuck? Because I know this, because I would go back the next day, back, what happened yesterday? I saw you yesterday. What was the Army doing with you? And they're like, yeah, they were, and they basically would say things like they were stealing my soul or whatever it was, right? They were using their X-ray vision to look at my wife. All these things that are absolutely not hearts and minds.
Yeah.
Not anywhere near it. It's matter of fact, it's the antithesis of hearts and minds. So we go to wherever it is, Ponce or wherever in Puerto Rico, and we do that shit, and no one goes back to check and see, hey, what happened and did this work? You don't collect hearts and minds. You do the opposite. You separate yourselves.
But you got to give them Gatorade. You forgot. If you give them a case of Gatorade and some water and some honey buns,
right? Well,
that was the thing that killed me, dude. Like, no one, like, I had this. This is so funny. I'll tell you this.
Yeah, do it.
And I hate to cut you off.
No, you're doing fine.
I was talking with my wife. Like, when my wife, she's gonna fucking kill me. When my wife met me 5 years ago, right? We were friends. We were friends for many, many years. Okay. And I remember when we first started dating, she asked me what I did. And I was like, I'm just an interpreter. I had 17 active human trafficking cases at the time. Yeah. And I didn't tell her shit. And I remember one day I got a call, and it was a situation where a mom had some shit happened, and I had to interpret. And I kind of looked at my girl, and like, I got done. And I told the social worker, I said, hey, I'm not in the car loan. She goes, just have her sign an NDA. And I look at my girl, I go, well, you got to sign an NDA. And she's like, is this what you fucking do? And then we started talking about, Iraq and all that stuff. She found my I Love Me book, and she found, like, I got some shit for doing, what is it that I did? I did a search and rescue in Joplin when the tornado hit in Joplin.
Yeah.
And I remember my wife said, she goes, talk to me about Iraq. And I said, well, Iraq, we did like what was called Hearts and Minds. And I said, to me, and I didn't know this at the time, but this came out years later, right? I think something came out unclassified where they were like, yeah, Hearts and Minds was just us collecting data, whatever the fuck. And I told that to my wife, and she goes, that's crazy. And then that very weekend, you know how everybody has that conspiracy theorist uncle?
Yeah.
This motherfucker started talking about that, Pete.
Yeah.
So we went to Iraq, and that was exactly what you said. We were taking their shit. How would you feel? Rico, what'd you do in Iraq? So, man, I just stayed back in the talk. I didn't do shit. And my wife is looking at my Archon going, why does it say 300 missions? Yeah. I go, you shut your fucking mouth.
Well, you know. But this is the thing, right? So we go out and we do all this stuff. We go, and look, if you're leaving camp hundreds of times, you know, like anybody who goes, anybody who serves as a hero, they're all combat veterans when you deploy. But if you leave the camp every day over and over again, you're doing something different, and you should be getting better all the time. We don't, because the next time you deploy, you're like, oh, now I'm working in the talk. Next time you come back, you're like, oh, I'm up at brigade, and you haven't been outside in years. You know, you haven't developed language capacity. And so this is why we struggle to win these things, is we can't even talk to people well, right? And I'm not saying you can't. You and I promise right now, if we're working for a battalion, we wouldn't work for a staff sergeant. We would work for the boss. We'd work right for the commander, and he would take us out and set us free, because we are the most valuable asset he has. We're two dudes that are going to bring him information he can't get from anybody else. And the stuff we do lets him see how his mission works. And it's so uncommon. When I would tell colonels, like, this is what I'm going to do for you, they're like, well, if you can do all that, you can have all the rides you want. You know, you want to leave the thing, and you're going to give me this information in return. Fuck yeah. And I'm like, and here's what's going to happen, boss. I'm going to come back in 3 months and you'd be like, Pete, you're the most valuable asset we have. We could not have done this. And I'm going to outperform entire teams. I would say this shit up front when they first got there, you know? And let me tell you something. It's happened over and over again. And I got really fucking good at this stuff. But it wasn't because, and look, I can shoot like crazy, but I don't worry about that. I don't worry about threat. I don't ever look for threat, because that stuff will show up. Everybody looks for threat, and they get it all wrong all the time anyhow. But what I do focus on is you and me going out and finding out stuff that nobody else can find out about, and meeting people that nobody else can meet. Because that's the thing. If you and I had to go to Puerto Rico with all you know about Puerto Rico, and the boss says, go find me the 10 baddest motherfuckers that are out there, the people that, you know, whether they're evil towards us or evil towards, find those people. Mm-hmm. You can't ask for them. Mm-hmm. It's going to take us months to maybe meet one of them. We're going to have to be busy all the time meeting motherfuckers to get to that meeting. Who teaches you how to do that? Who teaches that capacity professionally?
You just described podcasting, man, because I have so many people that ask me, like, dude, how the fuck have you gotten some of the people? And dude, I'm honest. I just say I talk to them.
Yeah.
But the thing is like, what they don't understand is when I'm talking to them, like, I know what I'm doing. And like, I play, you know, the thing, man, it's funny you say that, and I can tell you this, you're a pretty cool guy. Like, I play dumb a lot. I've done this for years, and this is how I always tell people, I choose my friends off only two things. Can I trust you with my credit card? Mm-hmm. Can I trust you with my wife? If I can trust you with both things, I can trust you. Because I know 100% that every single friend that I've had for over 10 years, I can trust them with both. And dude, those motherfuckers, they'll fucking get rid of a body for me if I needed to. You know what I'm saying? And it's the same thing. But the problem is that's what people don't get is, like, you know, the power I have as an interpreter. You know, let's look at the guy in Africa that was doing sign language, and he was fucking making it up, and they're doing a political speech. Bro, you fuck up one word, you start World War IV, World War III, motherfucker. You know what I'm saying? Like, you go to court and someone says, oh, they did this and they did that, and blah, 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 and this and that and this and that, and you don't know what that means. Like, you're costing someone's life. Yeah. And it's very real too. Like, it's very fucking real. The schools, I'll use the schools as an example. The schools for the longest time, they would let the kids translate for the parents. And I never forget this one time. I used to tell the schools, I go, you're going to get a kid that the kid's going to keep fucking up. You're going to keep pushing him by grades because you don't want to use an interpreter. And that kid eventually is going to get caught, and the mom's going to beat the fuck out of that kid. Because let me tell you, Hispanic families, bro, we don't believe in the hand. We believe in la chancla and la cojea, the belt. And dude, I never forget this, Pete. Had one little girl that she looked at me, she goes, no te necesito, I don't need you. And I was like, listen, young lady, if I don't do my job, your mom can get in trouble and you can get in trouble. And I don't think you want that. Yeah. No. And dude, turns out she was changing her fucking grades, Pete. And she was telling her mom that she was doing good. And when I started interpreting, bro, like, I saw, you've probably seen the Hispanic look.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, that stare like when we get home. You know what I'm saying? And dude, that's the thing. People don't understand the importance of communication skills.
Yeah.
They just don't.
It's this is one of the main things that I talk about why we lose these fights is because we don't understand that. You just described developing high risk trust. You know, giving me your credit card, let me talk to your wife, right? These are the things, these are the metrics that we have to do in the other direction.
Yep.
Like I have a trust account. My job is to be out there and go meet people. So I'm going to extend you trust. Here's the other thing I'm going to do. Rico, check this out. You and I are going to go out. We're on a mission, right? And we're going to go talk to the mayor. And I'm like, hey, man, I want to come back and talk to you about a couple of these things specifically, right? None of these things are threat-based. Mm-hmm. I want to understand what you want to do, what your plan is. When do you want me to come back? Give me a date and time that you think works for you. And then the guy would be like, yeah, hang on. And he opened up his planner, which I never saw him do with other people, and be like, how about Monday at 3? Can you come back Monday at 3? And you're like, yeah, I come back Monday at 3. And then you show up Monday at 3, and he's like, I'll be damned. I got an American to show up to a planned meeting because you know what normally happens is we just show up, hey, unannounced, you know, just take up their entire calendar and blow it out. And when you treat someone with respect like that and you trust them, you know, because I'm not talking about anybody, I'm talking about people that you know get to know. That's it. I've had the Afghan elder pick me up from the camp, put me in his car with his people, no weapon needed, but I brought a pistol, you know. And I would say, should I bring a rifle or a pistol? And he's like, yeah, just bring a pistol, whatever, you'll be fine. And then we go to their house and we go have our meeting and then they drive me back, right? But there's not a platoon of dudes around me. And so they can chill out. They can be themselves. I can meet their families. That kind of trust, that metric, we're never taught to how to do that, to measure it. When I come back to the commander and say, I just went to so-and-so's house without a patrol, you know, and they know that I'm not like being flippant about the risk or anything. They know that I know what I'm doing. They're like, holy shit, who are you going to meet next? And I'm like, just wait until I tell you, you know, because I'm able to meet people because I don't need 40 dudes to protect me. I got this boss right here, this other boss, the Afghan elder, you know, the whoever the top guy in the village is. When that guy protects me, there's no army in the world that make me more safe than that guy.
I'll give you an example too. One of the big issues Puerto Rico has with immigration is we have a lot of Dominicans that steal our identities a lot because the Dominicans come to Puerto Rico or they come to the United States claiming they're Puerto Ricans. And I remember one time I was working with a 3-letter agency and I was like a GS5, you know, and we go to this house to talk to somebody because they had a guy in jail that was claiming to be Puerto Rican, but he was selling drugs and he was selling drugs in schools.
Right.
Like if you do that to me, you can go fuck yourself. Yeah. Especially if you're selling coke to schools, okay? And he had a side chick that she knew him. And I went with one of the agents and we got to the house and they heard something. I can't recall where this was many years ago. And they ended up catching someone in the house that was like running. They had him wanted and shit. And I sat down with the chick and I go, yo, mommy, you know, how you doing? She wouldn't say shit. And I just talked to her for like 5 minutes. I'm like, mira, mi amor, you know, what's up? And a few minutes later, I look at the agent and I go, here's his name. Here's the dude's mom's address. Here's his how to get his birth certificate and shit. And he just looked at me and goes, what the fuck just happened? I'm like, I don't know. I just sat down and talked to her. And like, I came to realize like how little training we have, like how little training they had of like, just being able to talk to somebody, and probably would help too. Like, I'm not going to lie. Like I was pretty, you know, I was good looking at that time. And, you know, I'm using that Puerto Rican swag, you know, mommy, what's up? You know what I'm saying? Like you got to use that sometimes. I do that with my wife. I don't tell her. I'm like, you know, baby, what's up? Like, okay. Like you just naturally learn things like that. And I think the other thing is that should be noted is one of the reasons we don't teach a lot of this stuff is because a lot of that stuff, like I learned a lot of that stuff working narcotics. Like I would see like the case files and like the wiretaps, the T3s, like how people would talk to each other. Yeah. And I go, oh shit, this motherfucker just finessed this dude. Like, because you know when you're in a wiretap, you fucking hear everything. Yeah. You know that the guy called and said, yeah, I got 10 keys. You know, I remember one time they call this like a slam dunk. The guy was cutting. He was cutting the coke, and in the call, as I'm translating the call, you hear the, yeah, man, you know, Poppy and this, and I'm just like. oh, these people are super comfortable with each other. But you know, I propose to you this question, Pete. Why do you think is it that we don't like really teach this kind of stuff that can like save your fucking life?
Because we think it's hard, and we don't bother to read the books, and we don't have time. So look, MP unit goes out to train to go deploy to Afghanistan, right? You guys might be running missions, you might not, whatever it's going to be. But I don't know, 80% of your training is going to be irrelevant to what you do when you get there. And if that number is it could be honestly 95%. I'm not even exaggerating. Look, combat lightsaber training is fine. How many times do I need to how many times do we got to train me on how to put a pressure dressing on? I'm not saying you don't have to reinforce it, but if you've done that 4 times before you deploy, come on. Like, this is the most basic thing. If you're talking about combat lifesaver training, all I really need you to know how to do is jam a needle into a vein. Have you ever given anybody an IV in combat?
No. Okay.
How many times have you had a conversation in combat when you weren't trained at all for that? Right? Yeah, like 1,000 times. Yeah. And so here's something we do 0 times, and we trained on it, I don't know, 10 times in a career. You know
why though, right? Tell me at least I can't answer for the Army. Well, you got to have that sharp training. Yeah. You got to have that sergeant's time. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to have that 5th sharp class. You got to go do fucking all this other stuff. That, by the way, if the people that don't know what that is, it's sexual harassment, assault response prevention. Right. You do that like like they do that like every 2 fucking weeks or something like that, you know.
And I'm not saying to denigrate anything or say, hey, but if you don't take seriously the vital things you do day in, day out, then you cannot develop professional capacity. Let me ask you a question. When you're translating for someone, how often are you like, this motherfucker right here has no idea how to ask this next question? Because they're not trained to how to run a conversation. I mean, how many times are you like, what are you doing, dude? And then do you ever just fix it for them because they're just so bad at what they're doing?
No, because my job as a translator, again, when I work in the legal field, is to just translate. Now, I'll give you an example. I've seen attorneys ask questions that I'm like, oh God, you're so stupid.
Yeah.
Like, literally, even when I've sat in court and I've been put, to talk, I know where the attorney's going. I just make fun of them. Like, I had an attorney one time ask someone a question about, hey, why are you mad that the person did this? And I go, well, they did this because I don't know these people and blah, blah, blah. And then the fucking attorney goes, well, they know the people and blah, blah, blah. And I look and I translate it and I go, oh my God, here it comes. And the attorney stands up and he goes, yeah, but he doesn't know them. So how is it okay for a one-side standard to happen and the other side? And I just like, dude, you sit back and like, as an interpreter, you learn from that. That's why I'm like really careful with what like people say. And like, I'll give you an example. Like, I don't allow the people around me to talk negative about themselves or about other people. It's fucking unnecessary. If I want to hear negative news, I'll fucking turn on. If I want to hear negative shit, I'll turn on the TV. You know what I'm saying? Right. I don't allow that because even in conversations, like when someone says something, like one of my homies, I'll stop him. I'm like, just stop right now. Stop right now, because I'm just going to walk away. Because
I'm going to back up and I want to commend this. When you're working with someone and you're doing important shit like doing drug investigations or interpreting in a combat zone, aren't you obligated as the interpreter to be like, hey, man, this ain't going the way you think? Because you do know what that person is. You know what the person you're talking to, what they're experiencing, because you're part them. You're part me, you're part the person you're talking to. Don't you think that you have to be able to go, hey, can we have to try this another way? This guy's getting pissed off. Because look, we are so ill prepared to have these conversations, right? We're so task oriented. I'm sure you're going to resonate with this. One of the things I would do is we'd go meet somebody new or we're getting to know. I would never bring up work first. Iraqi, Afghan, didn't matter who it was. I would never bring it up first. Let's have chai. Let's have a meal. I wouldn't do a damned thing until they said,
relax.
Can we get to work now? And it's like a game for me. And I'm like, I'm so desperate to ask him, some questions, but nope. And I would like, What would you like? Like, how many times, and I would say, how many times has the American said to you, ask me anything you want about my family. I'd love to get to know you. It's because I'm going to get to know you. You may as well get to know me. And I would never lie. I would never lie. I never used like some weird name. I would just say, yep, I'm Pete. You can ask me anything you want. And I would exchange that information. And you tell me, like, if we go to Puerto Rico and we act like that, if we go out and we just chill, get to know people and never really focus on the thing we really want, aren't we going to do better than a team that is like all geeked up and, you know, got a dip in their mouth and drinking Rippets and like, I got to find out this, you know, the commander needs that and that kind of thing. Don't you think we would just tear their heads off and whoop the rest of the teams in our battalion if we approached it that way?
Here's the problem. From a tactical perspective, yes, I agree with you 100%. Because I can't tell you how many times I've heard attorneys, right? And I look at it from 3 points of view, right?
Yeah.
When you're interpreting in the legal field in court, your responsibility is to say everything verbatim. That's it. You don't do anything else, right? It's not my problem if he understands it. It's not my fucking problem if they don't get it. It's my problem to relay the message, right? Now, if there's an issue, I would always say, hey, the interpreter needs to make a clarification because there's probably a language barrier, right? In the medical field, when you're interpreting, you can make those clarifications, and you can, if you see something that doesn't seem right, you can make a clarification. In combat, unfortunately, I've never had the honor, and I would love to, but like, I don't know how my wife would react if I got a call going, hey, would you like to go to Colombia for $2,000 a day? Because I would, bro, 100% I would take that. Like, I miss going out. It's not even, you know what it is, Pete? It's not even the fucking money that drives me. Like, before I answer this, it's not even the money. It's just, I get to go do some gangster shit, and I get that experience.
Yeah.
So, to me, I agree with you that if we eliminated a lot of the bullshit that we do, we could. But the problem is number one, not everybody is as intelligent as they think they are. Number one. Number two, not everybody can carry a conversation and navigate a conversation. Like, dude, I've seen attorneys that they know how to like land a plane. You know, it's kind of like a comedian. Like when you're a comic, you know, you start out and you're reading the crowd.
Yep.
And I'll give you an example, right? I told a joke a couple weeks ago, you know, I promise it's going somewhere. And I said, you ever get into an argument with your wife about something stupid, like towels? Like, you don't know how to fold towels. And you get in your car and you drive 100 miles a fucking hour to hit a tree. And then you hear the ding, 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 ding. And you put your seatbelt on and you go, I don't want to kill myself that bad.
Yeah.
Like, you start to understand that, like, not everybody can do that. So unfortunately, yeah, there are times that I wish I would have. I probably could have said something, but then the problem is I'm stepping outside of the boundaries of an interpreter, right?
Yeah.
And in combat, it would be absolutely different. Like if you and me, to utilize that example, we'll go to Puerto Rico. Obviously, the first thing is we look at the mission briefing, we look at where we're going, we look at the packs, we look at everything, and then you and I would sit down and probably, like, what I do with everybody, like when I go interpret, is I try to talk to them for a little bit. Like, you know, even when I podcast, like I normally try to have a conversation with people to try to build in, like, okay, let me see your reaction when I say this. If I say this, how do you react? Do you turn this way? Does your head towards side? Does you do this? Do you do that? When I interpret, I love it because I don't have to do any of that. Yeah. Now, in a combat scenario, 100% I agree with you, because I don't want you to get shot.
Yeah.
You know, you're my homie. We're going here to do hood rat shit. You know what I'm saying? Whether they know it or not. But the problem is that you have to define a line, because then what happens is the interpreter wants to do your job.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, that's not what you fucking do. You know, like, this is what I need you to do. These are your limitations. So that's why it's very important when you get interpreters. Because, dude, I know interpreters that have been fired and have gone to jail because, like, look it up. There's an FBI Arabic interpreter that he was translating wiretaps, and his fucking name was brought up, and he changed his name on purpose. And it's like, that's the problem, shit like that. But I agree with you. Like a lot of the times, if you just send like a couple people, man, you send a couple bottles of whiskey, a couple bottles of vodka, take them to a strip club, bro, you'd be amazed at the things that people will tell you. You'd be amazed at the shit that people will be like, you know what, Pete, like that motherfucker over there.
How many times have you gone to NTC and they handed you a bottle of whiskey and said, go get me some information?
NTC, what's NTC?
National Training Center, you know. JR.
Oh no. Oh God. I've never been to NTC.
The thing that works, they don't train you on it.
Oh God. It's so crazy. I've been to WLC, MP school, obviously, SRT.
Right. I mean, this is legitimately a thing. Counterintelligence agents specifically by regulation, I can drink in a combat zone, right?
That's dope.
Yeah. And it works.
Dope.
But who teaches you how to do that? Where's the God? There's an FM for how to put your socks on.
Oh
right?
My God, I was just telling my wife about that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, thank God that you brought that up.
There's not an FM for how to drink shots. So, you know, like how to operate as a team that has to drink. Like we had to drink all the time in Bosnia. Now, look, the rules for drinking and driving are different. But I promise if we would have gotten into an accident, they would have thrown the book at us, right? Even though we're allowed to drink, all of a sudden, you know, when you don't drink, but who trains you on it? What NCO is going to say, hey, I know you're going to go into the field and drink today because that's part of your job. See you later. I'm not ever going to train you on what to do with that.
Yeah. Know how many shots you can take. Know yourself, like how your body feels, like how your body operates when you're not cognitive. Because that's another thing that they don't teach people, man, is like how to listen to your fucking body. Like, dude, like I know, like, you know, for me, I deal with stuff like if I don't go outside, if I don't go work out, you know, I have an issue. If I don't go to jiu-jitsu, Rico's a little off, you know. If I don't take my meds, Rico can be a little off. If I don't drink enough water, Rico can be a little off. But they don't really teach you this fucking shit. You're 100% sure. The thing is like, how the fuck do you change the doctrine? Because it's so hard to like, dude, I'd love to teach Spanish language to people. But the thing is like, there's no guide to say, how do I teach this CIA operator, this 3-letter agency, or this dude, how can I go and teach them this format that I know? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the other thing is there's no clear guidance, and we live, and it's so funny, right? Because get ready for this. We live in a society where the flow of information has never been this fast.
Right. Yeah.
But everybody wants to, like, you know, it's
no, I know. And I don't want to take a whole lot more of your time because it's been a fun conversation, but
nah, dude, you're good. I'm good for like 4 hours. I block 4 hours.
I am not. I am more busy than that. I appreciate that. And we'll go again. But you get what I'm talking about here. Like these things, the situations are hard. And I submit to you, and though I'm not in the drug legal world, that I could build a better interpretation team than what currently exists because there are 3 specific functions, right? Function, and if I deny you, a native Spanish speaker, if I deny you the ability to be great at what you do culturally and everything else, because you're not just translating words, that sells short what you're capable of doing, then I've just denied, I don't know how much capacity, if you were just to guess, by only limiting you to exactly saying what I say and never being able to improve upon it, never being able to bring culture into it. How much have I denied? Like how much communication have I denied in that engagement?
A shit ton, because the thing also is, I'll put it to you this way: if I was told, Richard, here's an unlimited amount of money, this is what I need you to do with Spanish, you build your own team. I promise you, you give me 5 days, I could fucking. You give me 24 hours, I'm pretty good. You give me 48 hours, like I can build like a dope team. You give me a week, I got a team that will. Because I've trained people. I have people in my mind right now. I already know who I would call and say, "This is how much you're gonna get paid," and those dudes would be like, "Let's fucking go, bro." But the thing is like, it's very limiting. Like, dude, there's been so many times where I'll say something, you know, and they'll go, "I don't understand what that means," and I go, "I don't understand what that means." Well, how do you not know that? And it's like, dude, because their level of fucking education is garbage. Like, do you not understand this? Like
that's the other part of the equation, right? That agent, that collector, that spy, whatever it is, that person has got to be educated. If you think because you command a unit, lieutenant, captain, colonel, general, if you think that you're somehow automatically, like, we spend all this time developing leaders because leadership is a learned skill. Well, motherfucker, so is influencing in a conversation. And if you think you can just walk in and do that without any kind of profession, you're wrong. You're wrong.
Because of what's on your chest.
Yeah, right. Like, this is not a simple thing. In another language, across a culture, across a religion, all these things in a conflict zone, and you think you're just going to walk in and win every conversation you're in, you're going to get your ass handed to you.
And that's the thing, man, is like, that's why I wish, like, one thing I wish I could do is I'll throw this out in the universe.
Yeah.
If I could, you know, man, I've been doing this for a while. And I think now that I have a kid, you know, that's one of the reasons I don't post a lot of pictures of my kid online. I'll tell you this real quick. I did an interpretation one day of a guy that they found kiddie porn. And a lot of the pictures that he had was of just people's Facebook.
Right.
And he said, that's how I get my rocks off. I just look at people's pictures. And, like, you know, a lot of that stuff sticks with you. And there's no mental health for interpreters. No, dude, for real. Like, I talked about this in my last class. I had 511 people in my class. And I said, listen, like, if you need to talk to somebody, you fucking come talk to me. If I need to sign an NDA, I'll sign the NDA. Because the problem is that there's no respect. Because people think that because of their position or whatever degree or whatever, insert whatever variable you want to insert, and I'll wipe my ass with it.
Yeah.
You don't have the experience that I have. You don't have, I'll put it this way. I'll go one step further.
Yeah.
You don't have the access to the people that I have. That if you say, Richard, I got a conversation here, man. Can you tell me what this means? I listen and I go, give me 10 minutes. And I make 2 phone calls. One's for me to find out if the first person has it, and the second one's going to be that he's going to find me the person. And people don't respect that because they go, I can just Google Translate it. It's like, no.
I mean, good, go do that, and me and Rico go out and kick your ass. You want to get your ass kicked? You go do that, and we're going to be busy kicking your ass.
Yeah, and go get fucked.
There's 2 things that I want to say to you. When I would see those colonels and those captains go out and engage poorly because I knew they weren't trained, I would target that area to return to and go, what do the people here think? What actually happened here, right? And you know, that hay was tall. We would just reap it.
Yeah.
Bring in all
kinds. But then you come back and it grows back again, man.
Yeah, and they'd be like, what in the fuck is going on? You know, like, because what that captain or that colonel thought was happening, what actually happened, especially like full colonels who have no business being in the field, like, I'm a farmer. Yeah, great. And you're talking about farming. Great. That's where all the good shit stops. And then I would go back and I would pick these guys and I would collect on us because we were the problem in this case, right? Over and over and over. And then the other thing I want to say to you, and then I'll let you wrap it up, is that E6 that you worked for that pushed it harder and said, we can improve. I guarantee you, he never said, let's go through these conversations that we had. You know, hey, PFC who ran this meeting and talked to this guy, interrogated it. Let's break down that conversation.
No, he did. He would tell us all the time. No, Staff Sergeant O'Neill, Patrick O'Neill, one of the things that he would tell us is, like, if you go on the villages, don't throw fucking piss bottles at the kids. It's like the number one thing he said, don't fucking piss off the kids. Yeah. And dude, I tell you what.
Well, that's pretty good. That's rare because most of the time we never even re-look at the conversation.
He was smart. He was very careful.
And I would say, hey, this is not a good conversation. And the person would be like, what do you mean? It was great, because they can't believe that they didn't have a good conversation. I'm like, here's where you lost control right here. Did you ask and get information on these things here? Did you flesh out these details? No? Then you lost. You got your ass kicked in this meeting. It's okay. I get my ass kicked all the time. But you got to go through and be like, did I miss these questions? Did I come back and ask them? You know, why were you there to answer their questions or our questions? You know, like that's the whole thing, right? And if you're there to answer their questions because you're trying to build a rapport, then your report should reflect that. Your report should not reflect what happened and nothing happened except for you got run by somebody. Anyhow, I'm now gonna shut up and let you give us your final thoughts.
Final thoughts on shit. We talked about a lot of shit.
Yeah, and then plug your podcast too.
Oh man! First of all, thank you for having me. I'm very honored to be here. We've been watching for the past 3 days a lot of your shows, and it was pretty cool to see. how you do things, and I picked up a few things. Man, I think the biggest thing is like just treat people humanely. I've come to learn that, you know, I mean, I've dealt with people that have murdered other people, people who've stabbed, you know, people who've done shit, and like I come to realize like a lot of the times, if you would just talk to them like a fucking normal human being, a lot of those people like they will talk to you. And you know, it's so funny because that's what my podcast is about. It's just the motto of my podcast is BYOB, like bring your own buds, you know, because it's like if I can talk to you like a homie, like the conversation flows so beautifully, and you learn from people. The problem is a lot of people want to, and I have this bad habit sometimes too. People want to talk more than what they want to listen. I'm 100% sure on this, man. I do it in my everyday life. If you listen, that's why I tell my kid all the time. I tell you, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. How smart is God? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Just follow the Rico Podcast on iHeartRadio.
Yeah. All right. That's good for me. Let me send this over. Check out Rico's podcast. We'll try to get a thing. It's on iHeartRadio. Just go there and just type in Rico podcast.
Oh yeah, it's the only one.
Yeah. All right, here we go. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you so much for watching the Break It Down Show.